And when you take your vehicle and you take it on a trail that, you know, is challenging, there's just such a rewarding feeling at the end of that. Well, moving into this episode of the podcast, one of the things that we love to do is we talk about parts, because Bronco guys love to buy parts. We love new things. I mean, it's like Christmas every time we get a new part or work on something. On the last episode, I was talking about rebuilding my engine, or swapping the heads. I blew a head gasket, so putting new head gaskets on. But it's been like Christmas. I mean, you know, just even getting new valve stem seals, I'm like, ooh, these are fun, you know, like playing with them. But one of the things that I got recently was these bumper lift they lift the bumper. So I have a 1-inch body lift on my Bronco. And you know that gap from underneath the front grille and underneath the back tailgate, when you get a lift, when you just do a body lift, you get this gap in there. And I've never liked the way that it looks, you know, because now above your bumper, you've just got this kind of gap. And so it's obvious that you have put a lift on your Bronco. So this company, Bumperlift, bumperlift.com, they got these, spacer brackets where basically you put this on your Bronco and put your bolts through, and it just lifts the Bronco just that little bit so that you don't have that gap anymore. It's more than this. I just grabbed these and brought them. But super cool, like very cool idea. And the guy who started this had the same idea. He was you know, sick and tired of having the gap on his Bronco, and so wanted to fix it and get the stock look back with still having a body lift. So he made these. They're 6061 aluminum. I don't know what that means, but he cuts them down with a CNC aluminum machine and does 1 inch for the front and the rear. And then he also offers them, if you have those little bumperettes. Yeah. You can still, like, there's a bumperette version and a non-bumperette version. But yeah, really cool and solid design. And I thought, man, this is a cool way to just raise the bumper a little bit and change the look of the Bronco after a body lift. So we'll put a link to these in the show notes if you want to take a look at bumperlift.com. But
these are high tech. They look really good too.
Yeah. Yeah. And he did them right. Like, it doesn't look, you know, it doesn't show that much under them. You can even get them painted black if you want and stuff like that. So I liked how he did them. I went for the polished aluminum kind of look. Or it's not polished, but it's just cut aluminum. But I think they look cool. So yeah, I'm excited to put those on, see how they work. You got anything for our parts corner?
Oh, I have something coming. Yeah, I've got a new exhaust coming for my Gen 6 Bronco, and it's going to change the tone, the note of the exhaust. I can't wait to get it. Should be a little more growly.
Yes.
It's too quiet for me.
Yep.
And it's coming from Tom's Off-Road, but I can't really talk about it yet.
Nice.
So
nice.
We'll have it on for Supercell. So if you want to hear it, come by and we'll start the truck up, and you can hear what an aftermarket exhaust sounds like on a Gen 6 Bronco.
That's super cool. That'll be a lot of fun. I think that's a cool upgrade for sure. Even if it doesn't increase your horsepower, it makes it feel like it increases it because it's just louder.
Sounds like you're going faster.
Yeah, that's right. Well, the bulk of our episode today, like Donnie said at the beginning, we're kind of doing a little off-road 101. Now, before we get into this, there's a lot that we can talk about with off-roading. So this may not be technically 101. It may not, it may be a little bit more the main upgrades if you want to take your vehicle off-road and why you would do these upgrades, because it's obviously there's a lot that we could talk about with off-roading. We could talk about spotters. We could talk about, but it's like, we're not talking about that necessarily right now. Kind of talking about, okay, So if you've never gone off-roading before, what should you do first to your Bronco in order to get it ready for taking it off-road? You know, what would be the things that you would look at? And Donnie said, I'm very proficient at off-roading. I've gone a few times. I wouldn't say proficient, or I wouldn't say I'm an expert. But the funny thing is, I have filmed a ton of off-roading. Like that's one of the main, one of the main things of my job is filming off-roading. If you've watched any off-roading videos lately, I've probably had a hand in filming them. So I know how to judge people really well when they go off-road, like I know how to be like, ooh, they took a bad line, or, oh, that's not a good technique.
They should have had a spotter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, as far as me doing it, I'm decent. We'll put it
well,
that way.
Experience.
I do have
use the word experience.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay. So talking about off-roading, 2 main upgrades, that you want to make to your vehicle to go off-road. So there's really 2 things that I'm going to focus on here. And the first one is a locker, and I'll explain that in a second. And then the second one is ground clearance, how to get ground clearance on your vehicle, and why you want good ground clearance. So starting with a locker, the reason that you want a locker is on your cars, on your any vehicle today, your 2-wheel drive vehicle is really 1-wheel drive. A 4-wheel drive vehicle is really a 2-wheel drive, because that power comes to the axle and goes out to the tires. So say your Bronco is rear wheel drive. So the power comes from the engine to the transmission to the transfer case out to the axle, and it's going to go to the wheel that is the easiest to move. So if you get that wheel up in the air, then that wheel's just going to spin. If you're, have 1 wheel on the grass and 1 wheel on the pavement, the wheel on the grass is going to spin. So really, your axle just kind of, and it does that on purpose, it allows that to happen on purpose. It's kind of like when you're going around a corner, you don't want your wheels turning at the same speed, because the inside wheel is turning slower than the outside wheel. The outside wheel's got to make a further distance to kind of catch up. So that's why you introduce a locker. So on a road car, you have an open differential. That means that both of those wheels can spin at different speeds, and the power from the engine really goes to 1 wheel. With a locker, what happens is that axle is locked, and both those wheels are going to turn at the same speed regardless of whether you're turning or going straight or whatever it is. Regardless of if 1 wheel's up in the air, that other wheel is going to get the same amount of power, and it's going to push forward. So a locker is really important when you're going off-road, because there's a lot of times that you're on loose ground, or you do have a wheel up in the air, or you're kind of moving in weird ways, that you want all the power to go to all the wheels. Like having 4 wheels getting all the power means you're going to be way better equipped off-road than if you're not, if you don't have that power.
I remember I had a new 95 4-wheel drive Suburban lifted with big tires, and I thought I could go anywhere until I got it stuck. And then I'm like, why is only one of the front wheels digging in and one of the back wheels digging in? It was because I didn't have lockers to lock the 2 wheels together in the front, Yeah. And it's like, oh, that would have been a lot better. So that's...
I had an Jeep Cherokee XJ, and learned that same lesson the hard way. Same thing, put mud tires on it, went out, and I'm like, what the heck? Something's broken. Like, not all my wheels are moving.
I got ripped off.
Yeah. But that's the thing. Yeah. A locker is a huge thing. And so with the Generation 6, the new Bronco, you have the locker options depending on the packages that you get. And man, getting a locker is awesome. I have taken the new Bronco off-road a couple times, and just being able to, it's a push button on your dash, and you push the button and it locks it in, and you can go. But the cool thing is you can still add lockers to the new Bronco if it didn't come standard with it, and make that a possibility. I believe ARB makes lockers for the new Bronco. and it, you add a little switch on your dash and it makes it possible. Now, we've talked a lot or you've probably heard a lot about the difference between solid axle and IFS. The new Broncos have IFS, independent front suspension. Your older, early Broncos have a solid axle, which, it's a solid axle. So Tom's Off-Road has a ton of different options when it comes to lockers for both. And so more for the early Bronco, but they still have options for the 6th gen Bronco. So it's definitely something to look at. Now, this is our DIY or PAY portion of our podcast. So Donnie, have you ever installed a locker?
No, not the electromagnetic ones.
Yeah. Yeah. I have, again, I haven't done it myself. I've watched it. If you watch my YouTube channel, I let Carl and his son over at Tennessee Classic Trucks rebuild my Dana 44 and my Ford 9-inch for my build. So I've watched people do it, but I actually haven't done it. I know there's ways to do it without all the fancy tools and all that, but I would say rebuilding an axle is probably a 4-wrench, maybe even a 5-wrench kind of job. There's a lot to it, and especially adding a locker and plumbing it in, if it's a e-locker, if it's an air compressed locker, if it's there's a lot going on there, a lot to it. So I would put that at a 4 or 5 wrench. So the second thing that we talked about with off-roading, so you got a locker, you want a locker, you want your wheels to turn. You also want ground clearance. This is an important piece of going off-road, because the more ground clearance you have, the bigger things you can drive over, and that's the whole thing why we go off-roading. Like, we get to drive over rocks. And so we've talked about approach angle and departure angle, like at what angle is when you're driving over something, is your tire hitting it versus your bumper hitting it. And then breakover angle, like how much clearance do you have in the middle of your Bronco. And I would say the biggest thing that determines this is tire size. It doesn't matter what lift you have if you're running 30-inch tires. Like, you're not going to be able to drive over big stuff with 30-inch tires. With 40-inch tires, you can drive over just about anything.
It's 10 more inches of lift.
Yeah, exactly. But, 5 more inches. Yeah. But the thing is, you want a lift so that you can fit those big tires. Like, that's why you add a lift. You don't add a lift for clearance. You add a lift so you can fit a bigger tire. And then you can drive over bigger stuff. I have on my early Bronco, I have a 2.5-inch lift from Tom's Off-Road with a 1-inch body lift, and I'm running 35-inch tires, and I don't rub. But I have my fenders cut in the back, and so that is a really good combination. I could probably go to a 3.5-inch lift, but when you go to a 3.5-inch lift, or you go above 2.5-inch lift, 2.5 inches, you kind of add some pretty extreme angles to your drive shaft. You add issues with different stuff under the Bronco, and that lift, you might have to make more changes to your Bronco to actually fit that lift. There's a lot of options when it comes to different lifts. And I say with lifts to really just focus on being able to get an entire package from a vendor, because, you can piece together something, I can get these shocks and these springs from this place over here. But like getting a whole combo, from Tom's Off-Road, it's geared for the Bronco. It's weighted for the Bronco. It's, they've figured it out. And you're not guessing on, well, what weight should I get? What kind of shocks? What, like all this stuff. So it's really made for the Bronco, and it works a lot better. What lift do you have on your Gen 6?
Right now, let's see. I have the Icon Stage 7, and it's a coilover with, it has quite a bit of adjustability, so I can go almost up and down 2 inches with it. So right now it's maybe halfway up. I think I can get another inch out of it, which
Yeah.
is kind of cool because it's got 37s on it, and they don't rub. But, you know, if the tires were any bigger, I would definitely have to go full stretch on that kit.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a little intro into off-roading, how to get your vehicle ready to go off-road. Hopefully that was helpful for you guys. It's kind of hard, like, you know, talking about this stuff and not going way deep into one thing. Like, I'm trying to keep it, you know, kind of a little light, and not going too deep. But yeah, it's fun talking about off-roading. It's fun to go off-roading. If you've never been, I definitely recommend it. It's a thrill, and especially when you're taking your Bronco. I know you don't want to, you know, damage your Bronco, but man, when you take your vehicle and you take it on a trail that, you know, is challenging, there's just such a rewarding feeling at the end of that. That's like, oh man, I love it.